Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to On Point. Been a little while since I've uploaded, but I've been super busy bear hunting and kind of got this one bear in my head and just been really pounding the area for that one bear. So a lot of time has gone by. Not a lot of content has come out. I apologize for that. But with the coronavirus, we do have a few new things that have come out. There's a new app called the Bowshot Bible. The guest today is Corey Haas. He will be talking about that. That's his app. And then there's also going to be a couple other companies I'm going to highlight. And I just kind of want to make sure that people are doing good, highlighting a few companies that I'd like to see maybe take off or try and do good, especially in a time where businesses are struggling. So if these next few episodes maybe kind of seem a little ad-ish or talking about a company or a product a lot, it's because it is, and I really want to see people succeed. So we will get back to the normal stuff where we talk about tuning and all that other stuff, and this episode does have a lot of tuning and stuff, but I am highlighting the Bowshot Bible here, and I believe in what Corey has going on, and that it's only going to get better with time, and that right now would be a great time to at least invest in it so you don't have to pay the annual subscription. You're just grandfathered in like he talks about. So outside of that, if you guys are looking at wanting to get into your bow tuning, working on kind of being self-sufficient with your bow and arrows and stuff like that, this will be a great episode for you to become familiar with the Bowshot Bible and figure out if it's something that you need to get to better further yourself down your journey. So outside of that, with any further ado, we'll go ahead and start this podcast. Appreciate you guys for listening, and I will see you in the end. So I wanted to have you on the show because me personally, I'm looking at doing better at the bow tuning stuff, and you have created this program for something that I think a lot of my listeners could use. And so I think it's a great idea to have you on the show to talk about bow tuning and what you kind of got going on, what you're building. And yeah, so I guess I'll let you take it away with your own intro real quick, and then we'll start diving into what we're talking about here.
All right. Yeah. Name's Corey Haas. I'm 43 years old. By trade, I am a union electrician in the Chicagoland area. I've been hunting since I was a kid. Predominantly started off as a duck and goose hunter. My father would take my brother and I out for that all the time. How I got into archery is kind of a neat little story. We're doing a public land pheasant hunt, and my dad's buddy found in Easton Aluminum arrow. I think it was a Game Getter 2 2315. It had a broadhead on it, and so that arrow made it home with us. It rode in the back of the truck with us kids. And, I looked at that arrow and I said, man, that is something special. So I started up taking up the archery and picked up a recurve. And then I progressed to a whitetail 2 compound, so on and so forth. First bow I ever hunted with was a Golden Eagle Sparrowhawk. That's back when I was probably about 15 years old. And got my first kill and have been bow hunting ever since. I mean, bow hunting has been my passion for sure.
Yeah, and be able to put something together like you do, you have to be passionate. I mean, you can't just whip something together, basically, from what I understand of your program, and just like, okay, we're done, hands washed. It's like, no, there's a lot of work that went into you creating what you have here, the Bowshot Bible, man. And I've said a million times on my podcast, I appreciate hard work. And to me, this is exactly what hard work looks like. I mean, you have a lot of data on your Bowshot Bible.
Yeah, so the passion has to be there, and then you have to want to learn. And I'm 43. I've been at the bow hunting since I was 15, and it's been a learning process ever since. And God, up until 2006, I kind of did what the basic hunters do: just set their bow up, get the field points to hit good, throw a broadhead on, and if I was within a good group, I'm like, I'm going to go hunt. It took one bow. It was a Bowtech Allegiance. It was an 80-pound bow back in 2006, and I was just starting to get into the competitive archery and getting into the finer points of tuning, and I could not get this bow to shoot straight. It was when the binary cam system first came out. And a long story short is the center shot, I had to have that so far away from the riser to get decent arrow flight that, it just baffled me. So I researched everything and anything I could. And it turned out that it was a little bit of a lemon. Bowtech sent me a tribute back to replace the Allegiance. But that kind of started the obsessive compulsive disorder of learning as much as I can with tuning. And every year since then, I've just tried to build my brain with more knowledge. So at one point I realized that I'd be going to the archery ranges just to do a 10 or 15 minute tune job. And I'd end up staying for an hour or two fixing other people's equipment. And because time is precious, I had to figure out a solution. So what I did is I had a domain name of shootingtime.com, which was supposed to be for a hunting show. I said, I'm going to take all the knowledge that I have with archery, and I'm going to put it on there. This way people can go to the website and do what they have to do. And if they need any additional help, they can contact me. And that went great. Traffic picked up. But as the years have progressed, a bunch of affiliate websites popped up and kind of crippled the traffic going to that website. So in my mission to help people out, I had to come up with another way to do this. And I thought, if I can make an app that makes sense for not only people new to the sport, but even seasoned shooters, it would be a tremendous benefit, especially in this day and age with the pro shops closing across the board. I mean, it's a tough racket to get into. It's a seasonal business. And especially with what's going on now with the COVID-19, I mean, you're going to see more and more shops close. So people are going to have to be more proficient in working on their own equipment, with the main goal of them being more lethal in the field for bow hunter. And if they're a competitive archer, hey, get that equipment as soon as you can. Get that it as forgiving as you can. Accuracy is the key. You want to place. If you're going to shoot in a tournament, I mean, if you can eliminate the equipment as being a point of blame, then that is the goal. It should really come down to form and execution. So I designed this app to cover everything and anything. And I did it kind of with the pro shops in mind. Not to say it's not for the average bow hunter, because it absolutely is, but there are some parts of the app that absolutely will make a pro shop's work much easier. And one of those features is the bow spec database. So you could pull up any bow going back to probably around the year 2000 or so and get specs, and the specs are needed for tuning the equipment. And one of the newest updates that's coming up, we're going to start adding string and cable lengths, which is going to be nice. And we're updating the ballistic calculator to reflect Rob Hummel's calculator that you could also find on dynamicarcherysolutions.com. So he put a lot of hard work into that calculator, and I'm honored that he was willing to let me use his formula to get that into the app, because I mean, it's pretty spot on.
And for guys that are wondering, Rob Hummel is from the Lethal podcast, and he created a calculator that really does a good job of calculating heavy arrow speeds, correct? I mean, because the heavy arrows are more efficient, and a lot of the calculators don't take in that, it takes more grains to slow down a heavier arrow than it would a lighter arrow, I guess is my take on Rob's calculator. Is that pretty accurate to what he created there? It seems to be more accurate than a lot of the calculators that I've used.
Yeah, a lot of the online calculators, whether you go to realtree.com or archerycalculator.com, those are kind of generic, that have basic rules to where, an inch less a draw length, you lose this much speed.
Correct.
But it's much more than that. Rob knew that. Rob saw a problem, and he spent a lot of time on fixing that problem. So, I mean, his calculator is pretty spot on. So
that's interesting.
Great feature.
Yeah, because I was talking to Rob one time, and each bow starts off with a beginning efficiency, and then so if you have a really efficient bow that's, say, at IBO, and if a bow has a lot more efficiency to gain depending on what you shoot, the calculators can be off. I remember when the Prime Synergy came out, one of the big things that for a short draw guy like me, they said our IBO retention is 50% better. Where most guys are dropping off 10 feet per second per inch, we're 5. And I'm like, or whatever, I'm like twice as good, or whatever it is. But I'm like, that's really cool, because for a short draw guy like me, 28 kind of short draw, I like that. And the bow held really well. And so his calculator or in your programs all take all that stuff into consideration, or I mean, what what exactly are we looking at there?
Yeah, so pretty much what you see on his website is what's going to be on the next update of the app. So you're just on the Bow Shop Bible app. You're going to go to the tools section, and on there we have 5 tools. One is the ballistic data. You're just going to go there and input your values, and it's going to in real time show you what your estimated arrow speed is, the momentum, and the kinetic energy of that setup. And thanks to Rob, these numbers are going to be much more spot on.
Perfect. So if I'm a guy wanting to start working on my own bow, and I get the Bow Shop or the your app, the give it to me
Bible.
here. There you go, Bow Shop Bible. It's on the tip of my tongue there.
Bible.
How would I be able to incorporate that into my process or learning tool and stuff like that?
Well, so the ballistic data, that particular tool, how you would be able to incorporate that is to satisfy your curiosities of a certain setup. If you're going to go hunt for big game and you want to know exactly, how fast that arrow is going to be flying, so you have a little bit of an idea of how far apart your pin gaps would be, that would be a plus there. But as far as the entire app itself, if you want, you want to go through the app like tab by tab and start going through it?
Sure, yeah, because I know there's a lot there, and I think it'd be cool to give guys an idea that what I want to do is break down a barrier or a wall that guys maybe are afraid to start working on their own stuff, and show them that there's tools out there like the Bow Shop Bible app that can help them get their foot in the door and really start making it easier on themselves. So.
Right. So the way it was created was with everybody in mind. Just like I said, from a pro shop, bow tech, all the way to the guy that's just getting into it, that's not afraid to work on his own equipment. And as we said before, that's going to become more and more of a necessity as pro shops unfortunately close, or the distance between their house and the pro shop is 2 or 3 hours. To go over the basic interface of the Bow Shop Bible. The first tab is going to be bow specs, and when you click on that, you'll be able to access the full catalog of bows, even discontinued bows going back to about the year 2000. So you're going to be able to pull up the specs, and the main specs are the axle to axle length, the brace height, and then the speed. And in the near future, we're going to have the cable lengths, string lengths, and the yoke lengths. So that's more catered towards the pro shop, but a great feature for anybody that just gets a bow and they need to work on it and they need to find that info without searching Google. Sometimes that takes quite a bit of time.
Did you say the axle to axle was on that part too? The ATA line?
Correct.
Okay, yep. That's important stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty much the main one. I mean, if you were to ask me, if you're going to get a bow to spec, I mean, that is definitely the main one I want to check out there. Moving down from the bow specs, we have the tools tab, and there we have the ballistic data, which is going to be Rob's calculator there, which is going to give you, of course, your speed, your momentum, and your kinetic. Next one below that is the arrow FOC. So, if you want to build a high FOC build arrow, you could input your numbers and see what you're actually at. There are 3 more tools, and the stabilizer wizard is the next one, and I actually came up with that, and that's more geared towards a competitive archer that's shooting the long front bar and a back bar, because I have been that guy that has had my rig set up with a 30-inch front bar, maybe a 10 or 15-inch back bar, and I got it to where I wanted it to be, and I was happy with the way it felt, but it was time to experiment. And sometimes when you up the total weight of your rig, that bow is going to stay on target a lot longer. So the idea of the stabilizer wizard is guys are going to be able to set their rig up the way that they like it. They're going to be able to input their value, and they're going to get some key numbers. One is the balance from grip percentage. And then if they shoot a V-bar in the back, it'll tell them their lean percentage. But the bottom line is they're going to get those key numbers, lock those in, and then they could up their total weight while keeping that perfect feel. So that's really a time saver right there. So pretty proud of that.
So what you're saying there, Corey, is so if I have let's just throw some numbers out there. 14 ounces on, I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers out there, 14 ounces up front, and then you have 8 on the side, and then you want to go heavier, and you want to make sure that ratio is still the same, it's going to give you the correct amount of ounces to move up or down.
Yeah, I'm actually doing that right now. So if you have a 30-inch front bar and 14 ounces on the front bar.
Yeah, I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt there, but yeah.
Oh, sure. And then the back bar, let's say you have 14 ounces is pretty front heavy. But the back bar, let's I mean, a lot of guys shoot a bow that's front heavy big time. But let's say you had 12 ounces on your back bar, that would give your balance from grip percentage to be 29.76.
Mm-hmm.
And also gives you your total weight. So you could actually lock that in, and then you could adjust your weights up and down, and it will keep that balance from grip percentage at 29.76, and it'll allow you to add more weight while keeping that feel just perfect. So I think for ultimate success for a lot of competitive archers, they want their stabilizer setup to be as heavy as they can have it while being comfortable and while not fatiguing. So basically you find what feels great for you. You start to up the weight until you start to feel the fatigue, and then you might back off of that a little bit. Because actually, and then in the stabilizer section of the app, I have a video to where I actually show with the aid of a laser of how the higher weights will keep your bow on target. So it's really neat. So that's definitely a great feature for somebody who's trying to, get that perfect score.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to start actually playing more with stabilizers here. I've been talking with my buddy Sean from Spider, and we're going to start playing around with a bracket and sidebar and everything like that. So I'll have to definitely take a look at that and just see what we're looking at there.
Yeah, and I actually just got this Mantis X8 archery shooting analysis system got sent to me, and this is going to be pretty cool to even add to that process. This is actually something that's going to show you how your bow reacts during the shot. So definitely looking forward to incorporating that into the app, so that hey, if the more tools, the better. That's gonna get you dialed in for sure. But moving forward in the tools section, cable tweaks. That's basically just a chart. That's for when you're getting your bow to spec or adjusting the sync and the timing. That's just going to give you a cause and effect. Twisting the cables increases draw weight, so on and so forth. So that's a handy reference there. And then
So I got a question for you on it before we move off of that. So there's obviously there's different cable systems out there. So let's talk about a Hoyt real quick. Let's say if I'm a guy who's wanting to learn about my bow and I have access to a bow press and I'm getting a tail left, would your app be able to help me fix that, or is there anything on there that you're going to have that's going to allow me to know how to fix that, what cable to twist and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. When it comes to that, you're kind of getting down into the tuning and the arrow section of the app.
Okay.
The way I designed it is for the ultimate setup. And let me see. I actually have that in the tuning info section. It's the bow tuning timeline.
Okay.
And you could actually, it's chronologically listed. And it goes down. I think I have, let me see. Yeah, it's pretty deep here. It's got 19 total steps. But that's going to take you from getting your bow to max your bow's draw weight first and foremost. Get your bow to spec, time and sync, all the way down to building your arrows. And a lot of people say, you absolutely need to bear shaft, tune your bow. You know what? If you look at the order that I have things in, bear shafting is part of it, but we bear shaft pretty much when we knock, tune and knock index our arrows. When we do that, that's when we establish that the dynamic reaction of every arrow is going to be the same. Now, this is prior to fletching. So when you talk about the bear shafting, unless you have done that in the early stages of building your arrows, bear shafting really isn't as effective as some people may think it is. Because if you took 6 arrows and you took one, and let's say five are fletched, and you cut the fletchings off one and say, hey, I'm going to see how a bear shaft flies. You shoot it. Well, that's not necessarily going to give you an accurate indication of how that arrow is flying, because of the way the spines are on these arrows. You could twist that nock an eighth of a turn, a quarter of a turn, and get a completely different impact. You could go from tail right to tail left to tail high,
Right.
tail low. But if you follow the chronological order of what we have here in the app, it really simplifies it. And as soon as you have all dozen of them nock tuned and nock indexed, then you're ready for fletching. And once they're fletched, you verify that, and you should be good. I do touch on in the app that if you change disciplines and go to shoot a different arrow, let's say if you're going to shoot a USA archery shoot or something, where you have to tweak your equipment a little bit to accommodate a different diameter arrow, and then you have to return back to a dozen arrows that you did that process with, I suggest to keep one arrow bear shaft that matches all the other fletched ones. And that's when you can dial your equipment back into that bear shaft, and the rest should be great.
See, what I see a lot, and you bring up a great point, and I've played around with this a million times, and it's a big assumption. You have a dozen arrows. Typically, a guy buys a dozen arrows, and then they'll fletch a bunch of them, and then they'll have one that they bear shaft, just like you said. And based off of that one bear shaft, well, the rest of them must be good. And that's a huge assumption, and usually it's wrong. So for me personally, like a lot of times in my process has been like yours in the past, where I will basically buy a bunch of arrows, and then, depending on how much time I have or how in depth I want to get with it, I'll do the nock tuning and bear shafting at the same time. And I'm not going to hang my hat on one arrow. I do every single arrow, because I don't know if I just picked the shitty one out of 12, or if I bought a cheaper, or let's just say brand X arrow that has a really crappy spine consistency, and whatever, they're just a low grader arrow, or I got a bad batch or something like that. It even rings even more true. You're hanging your hat on one arrow on a really crappy batch of dozen. That's gonna, it could bounce a couple thousandths between arrows. So
yeah, and man, I mean, Garrett, we go into great detail in the arrow section. I'm going to pull that up here. The recording arrow data section of this app. If you watch that video and read that text, you'll see how even a high dollar arrow, I mean, we test them on 4 points. So we test them on 0, 90, 180, and 270, and we document that. And off them documentations, you could spot out the one or two that might not play well with the other ones. You may have two that are extremely weak, extremely suffered. So that just goes to show you that these arrows are not perfect at all. And you cannot bank on one bear shaft arrow to indicate how the other ones will fly. Now, let me give a disclaimer here. If you have a guy that's primarily a bow hunter, and he wants to check his rig, he most likely, if he has 6 fletched arrows, he could shave off the fletchings, shoot the bear shaft. And, if it's within reason, he knows he's good. If it's crazy off, knock right, knock left, then he knows that something's up. And he can make a field adjustment to get it to look good. And, he's shooting fletched arrows, probably close yardage. He should be fairly decent. But if you talk about your competitive archers that are going to do a field course, shooting expensive arrows, shooting out to 85 yards, now things are a little bit more important as far as getting them dialed in as good as you possibly can. So that's why the chronological order of building those arrows, to me, is very important, because you're setting yourself up for success with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It just seems like on a lot of my builds, I get one or two problem children out of a dozen,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
either spend an hour on each one of those arrows and figure it out, and then eventually just make them a blunt arrow or a field tip arrow or whatever, or you just me. I'm just busy, and if I get two that are just causing me issues, I'll just screw them. I'll just use a field points with them and have fun and do stupid shots with them. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you guys have your own bow tuning and arrow process. I didn't know you guys have the arrow process on there too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over the sections real quick just to paint the picture for the people listening here. So we kind of covered bow specs, and then we covered the tools. The next section is the archery knot section, and I thought of every and any knot that you would want to tie, and I have them all in there. Each one has a video except for two. Like the simple ones, they just have a quick animated GIF of it, like a clove hitch and a lark's head.
Mm-hmm.
But the main ones, I have detailed videos along with the animated GIF, as well as a write up. And we have 10 knots there. So we pretty much cover everything that you'd want to use as far as knots for tying in equipment. And there is a bonus one that I came up with. It's a bowsling knot. I made this bowsling knot with D-loop material, and man, I'll tell you what, it works out great. So there's really no need to go buy, an expensive bow sling. If you have D-loop material and you follow the knot that I show you, it cinches tight around the riser. And since D-loop material is pretty rigid, man, it just like stays in place and it's just awesome. So, I mean, it's a cheap way to get a bow sling on there. And then moving forward, we have the installation section, tuning info, and then the arrows. So the installations, the tuning, and the arrows are the bread and butter of the app. With the installations, we go over how to use two different bow presses. We show how to use the Specialty Archery Pro Press and then the Last Chance Archery Easy Press. We go over the parts of the bow. Then basic things, D-loop, setting peep sight height, fixing peep orientation, which we all know that we have encountered that, to where the peep twists.
Mm-hmm.
And I show 3 ways to correct that, a couple of ways that you could do real quick out in the field, and then the ways that I've done it in-house, including like walking the strands. And then we go over installing the 3 different kinds of rest, fixed rest, limb-driven, cable-driven. And then last 3 installations would be bowsling, which you think would be very, very minor. But if you put a bowsling on too tight, guess what? You're going to have torque issues. And then the stabilizer section is pretty neat. That's also where we have the slow-mo video that shows the difference of the higher weights versus the lower weights and how it keeps your bow on target. And then a really cool section, which is installing sights, first, second, and third axis. And we go over how to set that third axis at full draw.
Mm-hmm.
That for a 3D shooter, man, that's pretty important there. And, just like with all these sections, you got the high quality video, which is only found here in the app. I mean, you can't go to YouTube or anything and get them. So the videos are here in the app, and they walk you through it. And I spent a lot of time on them trying to get them absolutely perfect. So they should absolutely help a lot of people out there. Moving to the tuning section. So the tuning section is my favorite, of course. Once again, we cover using the 2 different bow presses, and then adjusting draw weight, draw length, understanding arrow flight, which I'm going to touch on that later, bow tuning timeline, getting a bow to spec, setting the timing and sync, which is pretty important, yoke tuning, cam shimming, paper tuning, bear shaft tuning, torque tuning, walkback tuning, creep tuning, and broadhead tuning. So I have a couple of favorites in this section. For bow hunters, the broadhead tuning page is a must see. The video in there shows 2 different ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The popular way is forcing the bow to have the same point of impact out in the field. So, hey, my field point, my broadheads are hidden the same spot. Well, I hate to say it, but that can hold true for some bows. You can have excellent arrow flight with your field point and excellent flight with your broadhead and have the same point of impact. But that's very dependent on the quality of the bow and the amount of lateral and vertical nock travel. So I show that way, and then I take it to the paper. And I would like to think that I coined the phrase lipstick tuning. So with the lipstick tuning, you're actually going to take your broadhead arrow and you're going to edge the veins of your arrow with lipstick. And you can put a little dab at the center of the broadhead as well if you wanted to. And then you're going to shoot it through paper. And let me tell you, after you did the force of the point of impact out in the field, if you take that bow, which you think is good now put it through paper and see if it is good. A lot of people are going to be very surprised, because what you did out in the field is you forced two completely different arrows to have the same impact. An arrow with a field point and an arrow with a broadhead, aerodynamically, even spine-wise, dynamically, they can be very different, and they shouldn't necessarily fly the exact same. So one of my beliefs is that a bear shaft arrow is its own arrow. A fletched field point arrow is a completely different arrow, and a fletched broadhead arrow is a different arrow altogether. And if you want to shoot them as good as you can, you're going to set up your equipment to shoot that arrow. And with the lipstick tuning, you are going to see the best broadhead flight that you have ever seen.
So I guess go into that a little bit more in detail, because the common train of thought is, and you see it all the time on all the Facebook threads, a tuned bow will shoot any broadhead. And I'm like, really? No. I'm going to say no, because I'll challenge that. Let's shoot a gobbler guillotine 100 yards.
All right.
End of conversation. It's going to impact different than a 200 grain Masai.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't blanket statement that.
Let's go to, if you have a mechanical that sits at 5/8 of an inch in flight versus one that looks like the head of a shovel. I mean, a big old two blade, those are going to have different aerodynamic qualities. And when the thing is people don't see what happens in slow motion. And one of the benefits of this app is I explain it to you, and then I show you at 1,000 frames per second what happens. And the biggest thing is this. These compound bows have cables. The cables have to be held out of the way of the arrow by the cable guard. Now, when you're drawing that bow back, those cables want to straighten out. Okay, so what that does is that actually twists that riser during the draw cycle, and when you release that arrow, that string path is an elliptical path now. So the actual string on a right-handed bow, if there's lateral nock travel, it's going to move in towards the riser and then back towards the rest at the point of release. That left to right to left movement wreaks havoc. What it does is creates bend in the arrow. That's when the dynamic reaction comes into play, and it changes the center of the broadhead or field point versus the center of the nock at the point of release, and that's how we have our flight problems. So, we show why a right tear is a right tear and what to do, and then we show it to you in slow motion. Or if it's an arrow that has too much bend during the power stroke, we show you why, and we show you how adjusting the power stroke with cam shimming can correct that. So there is so much in this app. I mean, it's really hard to pick it apart and go over all the cool things. So I'm going to try to get back on track here.
Yeah, no worries. And after that statement, I mean, I have been able to get my broadheads and field points, to shoot together, and whether I'm forcing that, just to give it, a different perspective, maybe I used to really rely on paper tuning, and then one of my buddies who I learned a lot from here locally, very accomplished target archer and hunter around here and worked at one of the bow shops. He's like, why do you give a shit where, how you fly through paper if you have really good arrow flight? And keep in mind, this guy worked on bows for a living, plenty of championships under his belt. He actually didn't care whether his broadheads and field points hit the same. He didn't care because he's like, I'll just sight in for broadheads. But my arrow flight's perfect with both of them, is what he was saying. I was like, that's really interesting because for me, I have a different train of thought on that because I'm like, well, I never know when a hunt's going to surprise me. Like, I want my shit to hit the same. I don't want to have to keep sighting in differently, right? And the common train of thought is if you have a tuned bow that your stuff is going to hit the same. So there's a lot of discrepancies out there. I mean, and I've got to the train of mind where when I can, and when, like you said, whether I'm forcing it over by moving my arrow rest or something a little bit, which I do, if I have to, micro, not major adjustments,
Right.
but micro adjustments. I got 4 different broadheads in my quiver right now for bear. 4 different broadheads in my quiver, one quiver. So I'm just playing around with shit and just trying to figure out, what broadhead am I going to grab when that bear walks out if I get a shot. But all of them are hitting within an inch at 40 yards of each other. I mean, they're all really close together. They're not smacking as if they're all the same head, but they're all extremely, extremely close. And I guess what is your actual stance on that? Because what you're saying is kind of going against the grain, but I definitely agree with a lot of it or all of it. But I guess what is your actual stance on a tuned bow versus arrow flight? And forgive me if you've already stated this, but I just kind of wanted to wrap it around in my head.
Right on. It kind of goes back to the thing that I said about a Fletcher with a field point is a completely different arrow than an arrow with the broadhead on it. If I was going to come out and bear hunt with you, I would decide what broadhead and arrow build I'm going to use, and then I would make sure my bow's to spec, and I would put that broadhead through paper. I would lipstick tune that broadhead. I would do it at 2 different distances just to make sure I'm not catching it in a corrected moment.
What would those distances be?
I did a study on paper tuning, and I found that 12 feet shows the biggest discrepancy, or the biggest bend, biggest flex, if your arrow's not flying perfect. That was with the Hoyt. That was going back a couple of years. We actually took shots starting at like 8 feet, and we went 2 feet back every time, and we charted the ribs in the paper, and we found that 12 to 13 feet showed us our biggest rip. And then as you got back to 26 feet, it was a perfect hold. So I typically go 12, 13 feet around there, and that's where I'll shoot through the paper.
When you guys did that, you guys play with dynamic spines at all during that whole thing? Like if you had a too stiff of a spine, did it change the distance from the paper versus having too weak of a dynamic reaction, or did you guys play with it? Because that's a really interesting thing you did there.
Yeah, no, we didn't. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. It was a buddy's bow. He was going to go and hunt with, and we just decided to do it there. We didn't have too much time to do it with different builds and whatnot. But by all means, I would absolutely take that arrow that I'm going to hunt the bear with, and I would lipstick tune that.
Okay.
And at the end of the lipstick tune, I would be absolutely proof positive that the center of my nock and the center of that broadhead in flight are right in line. And that's what we're after. We're not after a porpoising arrow. We're not after an arrow that's trying to fishtail and correct.
Right.
And I believe I heard you talking to Greg Poole on a previous podcast about, I don't know if he had mentioned that he had one broadhead that shot well, and then he put another one on, and he's like, nope.
Yeah. At like 85 yards or 90 yards.
Yeah. And
like, Jesus Christ.
And I heard that, but knowing what I know, I'm like, man, well, maybe you need to tune the bow to that particular broadhead. That my belief is that you can, and you could get any broadhead you put on there. You can adjust the equipment to have that absolutely perfect, because when it comes down to it, like I've said a couple of times, when you change the aerodynamic qualities of that arrow, you put a different head on there, it's going to react differently. Sometimes
I can attest that, because there was one year where I was testing. I had that Synergy. It was it was so far outside. I mean, it was way outside, but it was shooting broadheads. Went to the range, and I was shooting, kind of doing like a Greg pool thing. I was testing a bunch of, I had 4 or 5 broadheads that were, I could only shoot one broadhead at a time because I would have smacked nocks or just ruined broadheads or ruined arrows. I was just killing it. And all the way out to 80, I was shooting, but there was one broadhead out of 5 that kept hitting differently. Although it kept hitting the same spot, it just wouldn't group with the other broadheads, and it was a Muzzy Trocar versus a Tooth of the Arrow versus a God, what else was I using? A Black Hornet. I forget what I was using. Just a bunch of different stuff. A Kudu. And for whatever reason, that Muzzy Trocar just didn't want to hit with the other arrows. I don't know why. It's not a bad broadhead. I mean, I've used them. They fly fine. But it was just kind of interesting that, the aerodynamics of an arrow or the drags, everything's a little bit different. So I've always struggled with, well, yeah, they can shoot, they all shoot, but if I really wanted to, I could shoot probably whatever broadhead I wanted. And whether I'm taking that one and then I'm sacrificing those 4 others over here that are probably going to hit more consistently in a smaller group than this one, I can still shoot that one just fine, but I'm going to have to commit to that one. So
Yeah, I think the most important thing though is penetration. And of course we don't see it with the human eye, but if that arrow is in the correction mode still, by the time it hits the bear or the elk or the deer, you may have impact flex. You may cripple your penetration. And the case in point is once upon a time back in like 2004. I don't know how old you were back then, but I had 100-pound draw Matthews Safari bow.
Okay.
And I had probably a grossly underspined arrow. I was shooting an ACC 371 with a 125 grain tip. And it was going to be my first kill on tape. And, a doe came in. All right. So I drew back, chip shot, 20-yard shot. I ended up shooting it right in the heart. It ran off and died, but I didn't get full penetration. Now, I was shooting a freight train at this thing, man. Why didn't I blast through the far leg? Well, what happened, I was getting fletching interference, and that created porpoising. So when that arrow hit, I'm willing to say that I twanged out a lot of kinetic energy there, and that crippled it from burrowing in and through. So that's why I just keep going back to if you lipstick tune it, that you have absolutely perfect broadhead flight. And when you're out in the field, that's it, man. If you're going to have the absolute best chance to penetrate through that bear, because that the center of your nock, your center of your broadhead, right, they are flying perfect.
I think a lot of guys, I've heard it hit quite a bit of times on other podcasts lately, but and I totally agree with it. That arrow flight is probably one of the number one. Probably one of the number one. That doesn't make sense. It's one of the top factors, if not the most important thing when it comes to hunting arrow is arrow flight. You can have the best, heaviest arrow ever built, but if your nock isn't following your broadhead, kind of like you're saying, center, it doesn't really matter what you're using, because if you slap it at a 45-degree angle, you're not going to get a pass through. It just doesn't matter. If your arrow's at a 45 and it's straight in front of you and it's coming in halfway sideways, then good luck. I mean, it's not going to make sense. So arrow flight for me and that's been a big reason why I've been wanting to get better at the bow tuning. Because I've been pretty in depth into the arrow stuff, and it sounds like you listen to the podcast a little bit. So I've talked arrows a lot. I've really tried to dive into it. I've invested, in a few pieces of equipment trying to get better arrows. But really, my personal weak spot is the bow tuning stuff, and so and a lot of that comes from the bow. I mean, obviously.
Right. Yeah, and then that's why, man, you definitely have got to dive into the tuning section of this and check out that timeline. And we have a lot of things in here that the competitive guys are going to love. Not just the paper tuning and the bear shaft tuning, but torque tuning, walk back tuning, and creep tuning. I mean, these are lesser known tuning techniques that when you're at a tournament, something like torque tuning, that can eliminate a lot of your left and right misses. I mean, it's really neat how it works, man. I mean,
Hmm.
to draw back and literally twist that riser
Mm-hmm.
and put that pin right on the X and shoot and have it hit that X and then twist it the other way and do the same thing and have it hit that X. You know that in the moment of the shot, if you happen to torque it, you've got a little bit of forgiveness there, and it can definitely help.
I'm
So
curious what you're referring to as creep tuning. I haven't heard that term.
yeah, so the creep tuning, you ever been at full draw and shot, and then next shot you're at full draw, and you notice that you creep forward a little bit and shot. So that means coming off the back wall just a little bit.
Okay.
Well, what we do with creep tuning is it's more of a fine tuning of the timing or the sync of the bow. And you could literally set it to where if you creep forward from the back wall versus holding tight hard against the back wall, you could have the same vertical impact.
Hmm.
So you won't have the high and low misses.
I was going to say, I
So
notice when I creep, or if I do creep, I'm usually high. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm not into that area yet, but I just noticed that I tend to float high. If I ever have any creep, it might not be a lot, but it's definitely my arrow seems to go high.
let me take a reading from the Bow Shot Bible. Section 5 of creep tuning. If the creep shot impacted higher than your hard back wall shot, you need to add a twist to the bottom cam's cable. This will advance the bottom cam's cam rotation, adjust the bottom
Mm,
cam cable until the creep shot and the back wall shot impact the same elevation.
really? I
There you
like
go.
that. See, there we
Yeah.
go. We're learning.
And there is a video. So
That's really cool, man. See, that's the stuff I like. And, to be able to help a guy, this is going to tremendously speed up learning curves is what this is going to do.
this is going to shave years off the process, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And I hate to say it. I'm 43. I got 2 kids. Life is stressful. I forget things. I have referenced my own sections just to make sure.
I do that too. I've gone back and
Not
listened to
kidding you.
my old YouTube videos like, what did I do there again? It's like,
Right.
oh yeah, that's well, okay. So
Um,
forgetful sometimes, but
yeah.
I love that. I love that you're able to just to pull up the answer of me saying, well, oh, okay, well, boom, boom, boom. Here's why. Okay, that makes sense. So I love that. I love that.
Absolutely. And then the one thing I wanted to touch on in the tuning section is the understanding arrow flight section. There is a video in that section that took me over 3 weeks to make. It's predominantly, well, it's actually all slow-mo video showing you why what we do does what it does to the dynamic reaction of the arrow and the arrow flight. And it is eye opening because you can't see it unless you look at it in slow motion. So what it's going to do is it's going to help concrete the understanding of why what we're doing works, and it should really take your tuning level to the next level. I mean, it should really make things make sense,
Hmm.
to put it frankly.
Yeah, I like it a lot. So, what else do you have in there as far as, and I'd be curious to see, and this is just because I wasn't, working on bows back in 2004 or anything. I wasn't doing anything like that. Have you noticed a change in like a center shot or anything like that for measurements? Because a lot of guys just go by 13/16 and just set it to that. And I hear that all over all sorts of forums. I'm like, well, that can't be. I don't know if that can be every bow. And this is coming obviously from a guy that doesn't work at a bow shop or anything. 13/16. I mean, yeah, it's a great starting point but that can't work for every bow, can it? I mean, and that might be a kind of an ignorant statement, but
No, it's fine. Yeah, 13/16 is the industry standard, pretty much. I know that's what Matthews goes by. I think that Prime is at 7/8, and they all may vary a little bit, but that's pretty much where the engineers design it to be. Okay. That being said, I have had bows to where that isn't where it should have been. I had a Matthews bow once to where it should have been in closer, maybe even like 5/8. But that is the main setting that you want to touch last when it comes to tuning the equipment. You want to set that to whatever they recommend, and let's say it's 13/16, and then you're going through the process of building the arrows, and when you're building the arrows, that's when you're actually going to be messing around with cam shimming and getting those arrows to fly as good as they can at 13/16. So if you have to move the power stroke, and when I say power stroke, I'm talking about the string, and you could also say the cam. You're going to move that over to where you're getting the optimal flight. So, when you exhaust cam shimming, that's when you can then go to adjusting and fine tuning the center shot location. You can start going a 16th of a way towards the riser or away from the riser to try to fine tune that in. Unfortunately, some bows aren't designed as well as they maybe should be, and you could exhaust all means as far as yoke tuning, cam shimming, and you could move your arrow rests further than you want to. That's when you can start messing with the dynamic spine of the arrow by changing the build of the arrow, making it bend more during the shot or bend less. So there are definitely a ton of options out there, but by far the thing that people should focus on first and foremost is adjusting the location of the power stroke. And when you watch that section of the app, you are going to see it in real time in slow-mo, and you're going to see why it's doing what it's doing, how the bend gets induced into the arrow, how the center of the field point versus the center of the nock can get out of a line or back in line and give you that great arrow flight. And not all bows are created equal. So there's something called lateral nock travel, which we already touched on, but that nock end, I mean, it can move in towards the riser, then back towards the rest during the power stroke. And on one bow, that could be pretty extreme, and that creates more tuning issues. And then you take a bow like a prime bow. Prime has done an outstanding job with almost eliminating lateral nock travel completely. What that does is that allows you to shoot a wider variety of spines and still have that center of your point and the center of the nock stay right in line. So knowing what you have and understanding how to correct things, I mean, it's big time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting this, and especially when you have the Rob Hummel's calculator on there, because I get asked all the time, how fast do you think I'll shoot with this? I'm like, I have to refer people to an archery calculator. I'm like, I don't, I could give you a ballpark, but I mean, guys really want to know how fast a bow is going to shoot before they buy it. And it's like, well, the shop should be doing you a service when making that decision. They should be, if it's important to you and speed's that important to you, they should be chronoing if they want to sell a bow. So, I don't know, opinion based there. But, that's just coming from a guy, if you're trying to help a consumer make a decision and he's wanting to know how fast he's shooting, he shouldn't have to go, which I'm happy to help, but he shouldn't have to go to a guy on Instagram because the shop's not willing to give him that info. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Plus, I mean, that's very important info if you're a competitive archer. Some tournaments you shoot, there are speed limits, and you've got to be within those speed limits. And we also touch on we have tutorials on a couple different softwares. So we got software for Archer's Expert, Archer's Advantage, and then the Archery Program Pro. We show you how to use these programs as well. So these also give you real-time, speeds. So that's another tool that you could use in addition to Rob's. I mean, if you can't afford those software programs, use Rob's. It's going to get you real close. But yeah, absolutely.
So does your or will your app eventually have the like differences in cams between models? So like back when PSE had the X-Force and they had like the HF and what was it, like the GX cam or something like that? Are you going to have all the spin-offs of each cam system or models, like a turbo versus an ultra or something like that? Or to what extent is your app going to cover bows and be able to encapsulate as many bows and cam systems as possible?
As far as covering individual bows themselves and having like a dedicated section to each bow, that'd be pretty time consuming,
Oh
and
yeah.
I would love to do that. But I really don't see that happening in the future, unfortunately. Um, we are going to add some bow specific tuning sections probably at the bottom of the main screen. Um, Elite has sent us a Cure, and the Cure is a pretty nice bow, shoots great, but a lot of people could benefit from a very detailed video on how to set that cam up for draw length and whatnot, and how to use their set system.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that could be in the works for the future. But since I myself don't own a pro shop and I don't have access to a wide variety of bows, I mean, it'd be pretty tough to do that as well. But yeah, if anybody has a suggestion, by all means send it to us, and we'll see if we can incorporate it in somehow. And if we're not going to do that, we have tremendous support through a bunch of different routes. There is an about section on the app where you can leave direct feedback. We have the website that has a forum on it. We have a Facebook group. I had a phone call this morning from a gentleman who's got the app, and he was trying to troubleshoot a right tear, and I pulled over and I talked to him, and we got it shooting good. You know, and this guy's going to go shoot some very big game, and he's concerned about getting in his zero flight perfect. So, you know, I took time with him. If we have the time, we are going to address it ASAP, you know, and try to help people out.
So that's pretty cool. So somebody is this an app that you have to buy, or do you just download it, or what's the deal there?
Well, here is the thing. The Bow Shop Bible took us over 2 years to make. Now, that's not full-time. I have a full-time job and a family, and my developer has the same thing going on. So it's been very time-consuming. So the price is at $29.99 right now, and currently it's at a one-time price. So what that gets you, whoever buys it now gets the ultimate resource as it is now without a subscription fee. Because of the fact that we're going to have to update the bow specs, we're going to be adding sections as time goes by. We may eventually go to a subscription fee to where you might pay the first 29 bucks, and then it might be 10 bucks per year to cover the updates. But if people get into it right now, they're going to be grandfathered in. So, I mean, the time to buy it is now, really.
So if somebody buys it now for 20 or 30 bucks, basically $29.99,
sure. Yep.
They're going to not have to purchase the future updates. They're just going to be grandfathered in, and they get it all for free in the future.
That's what I said.
Really?
I'm a man of my word. Okay. So
that's cool. That's cool.
I'm not the coder, but my buddy Matt Rundy is doing the coding on it, and he's done phenomenal work. And if we do go to that model, it's going to be on his plate, but we're going to do whatever we can to make it to where those people who bought it now are going to be grandfathered in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, but I do have to give a couple shout outs here, if you don't mind.
No worries. Yeah.
Now, with anybody that gets into archery and bow hunting, you know, the main thing is finding mentors. And I just want to give thanks to the guys that have gone out of their way to help me when I was coming up and help people still. That's your Randy Ulmer, your George Riles, actually Eric Newman's been a tremendous help with this app. He's kind of been my quality control guy on this. Tim Gillingham has gone out of his way and put many things out there as far as arrow building and whatnot. So I definitely wanted to thank those guys because that's what keeps the spirit going. I mean, we all have to be in it together. I mean, the brand loyalism can create feuds and whatnot, but
yeah.
I mean, the main thing is we need to help each other become more accurate, and in turn, that's going to create more recovered game and fewer endless blood trails. So that's kind of like the spirit of the app.
I like that. And this, you know, what I hate about the forums is that you get red team, blue team, purple team, whatever. It gets tribal real quick. And this app isn't a forum where people can go dump their garbage on and give their opinions. It's just, here's what it is. If you need any more help, give us a call. Right? I mean, there's no Joe Schmo being able to add information on there. It's not Wikipedia of archery. So it's a legit app that, if I wanted to go figure out how to fix the left tear on my Hoyt Power Max, I could probably learn how to do that real quick on your app.
Absolutely. And as far as being like the brand loyalist, don't do it. I mean, I've shot the majority of brands out there, and back in 2005, 2006, it was kind of a black eye for Bowtech with the split limbs and stuff like that. But I will never swear them off, and they have some killer bows out right now, and I will probably shoot one here in the next year or two. So you should never write off any kind of brand at all.
No, I mean, I've had, and the folks that have followed the podcast and stuff, they're aware. I've had some issues with the budget bow. It didn't really go my way. I wouldn't call it an absolute victory. But that doesn't mean when I do bow reviews in the future, like I did this year, I gave Bowtech a pretty damn good reviews. And I've done that in the last couple of years, despite having a BTX blow up 3 times on me. So, it's easy to get biased, but when you're trying to be objective, kind of like what you're doing, you're just being objective. You're given the specs. There's not really much room for bias, because a bow's going to shoot what it's going to shoot, whether you like it or not. And so there's not really much room for bias. I mean, if you like to be 2 inches outside a center shot, I'm sorry, that's not going to work, whether you really like to be 2 inches outside or not. It's just not going to work. So
yeah, I mean, I've had guys from pro shops say, don't worry about paper tuning. Just do a walk back tune and call it good. And I'm sitting there thinking, hey, if I just spent $1,200 on a bow, I want that arrow coming out of the gate straight. We had some problems with the Matthews Chillard before they put the top hats in there. Man, they just created some issues, man. A lot of right tears, and a lot of people would say, hey, you just got to take the fixed blade off, throw a rage on there, and go and shoot. But
let's just mask an issue.
yeah,
really,
for sure.
But and one of the Chillar is one of my favorite older models of. I mean, my buddy still shoots one today, and I see guys eating those up still. I mean, I like that bow. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, but no, the Chillar, when the first Chillar came out, I don't believe that they had any way to shim them cams, and I think then the next year they put the top hats in.
They fixed it.
I think. Yeah, because prior to that, you had to get real creative. I mean, God, I saw nuts and bolts. Al from California, he was saying in a thread, he's like, yeah. You gotta take the bow apart. You gotta shim underneath your left limb on your top limb set, and then that's going to give you what would be, moving the cam to the right. I'm like, wow, man, that's pretty extreme for a brand new bow.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to bring in the light before we wrap this thing up here, Corey?
Yeah, let's see here. Not really. If people wanted to find out more about the app, feel free to go to the bowshopbible.com.
Okay.
We've got quite a bit of info there. And then the Facebook group is a great place to go to talk to people who already have the app. And that's about it. But the bottom line of the app is it should help out both competitive archers and bow hunters alike. I mean, the main thing is getting the bow as accurate as possible, eliminating the equipment and bringing it down to your actual shooting form and execution is what the app is about. But there are so many deep sections on here. I mean, it'd be impossible to cover everything, but by all means, the price of it when you're talking about buying an app, I mean, it's up there, but it's up there for a reason. Because it took over 2 years to make, and it's what you have that's in it. It is so valuable when it comes to learning and getting that equipment tuned as good as you can. And when comparing to other products out there on the market, I mean, I think Jesse Broadwater has a video series right now with USA Archery. I think that's at $77. So at the price we have now, especially with being grandfathered in, it makes total sense for not only pro shops, but anybody who's concerned about increasing their success rates on the field.
Well, what's the Facebook page? Is it just Bow Shop Bible, or how do people find the Facebook page?
Yeah, just go on Facebook and search Bow Shop Bible.
Okay.
And once you come up, that's just a page, but you want to find the group and then join the group, and then you can post questions and whatnot.
Perfect.
Yeah,
and is there a way to get a hold of you if people have questions or concerns?
Yeah, you could do it straight from the app in the About section. You could leave direct feedback, which we check daily. You can go to the Bow Shop Bible group on Facebook. You can go to the website, which has got a forum. And I'm pretty sure my phone number's there as well. So, I mean,
do you have an Instagram account for it or anything like that?
I do, but that's one realm of social media that I haven't perfected yet.
Oh, okay.
But I know that that's where it's at, and that's where I should focus. But
yeah, a lot of guys really get like after they listen to the podcast, it seems like DMs are where people get a hold of the guests the most common. So if you do and you get one set up or something like that, give it to me later, and I'll make sure I slide it into the description section of this episode, and so guys can find you on there. For sure, man. But I know you and I have talked about having you on for a while, man. I finally appreciate you putting it together with me on short notice, and I'm looking forward to it, and I bet you see my subscription come through very soon. So I think I could probably get you a copy of it, Garrett. Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate it, man. Bud. I appreciate it. Absolutely, buddy. I do appreciate you having me on the podcast. All right. So, well, everybody, thanks for joining us, and be sure to go check out the Bow Shop Bible. I think it's going to be a great tool, and it's only going to get better with time. So you got it. All right. Thanks, Corey. All right, buddy. Thank you. See ya. All right. See ya. All right, guys. That's this episode of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys haven't yet and you want to leave a review, I plan on doing some really cool coming out of the coronavirus. I want to do some cool giveaways, kind of celebrate getting over this crap and just kind of moving forward and helping other people move forward. I want to kind of do some cool giveaways. So I'm working up something in my head, not really sure what it's going to be yet. It could be big, it could be not so big. I'm not sure. I'm going to try and work with some of my buddies that have products or companies and just see what people are willing to do. Just kind of throw some things out there. So I know very, very broad, very unspecific, but it's very early on, and I don't want to promise anything that I can't cash. So outside of that, appreciate you guys listening. Be sure to leave a review on iTunes. 5 stars is the max. I'd love to have it if you think we deserve it. And if you can leave a description of why you left a review or what you liked about the podcast or what you didn't like about the podcast, just leave a review. Let me know what you think. What can we improve on? What do you like? What do you want to hear more about? All that stuff is super valuable. So outside of that, appreciate you listening, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.